Everyone thinks I'm strong. That's the sentence people use when they talk about me, when they introduce me, when they describe how I survive everything life throws at me. They see my smile, my calm voice, the way I always say, I'm fine, even when I'm not. What they don't see is how heavy that label feels. Strength became something I was expected to wear every day, like armor I never asked for. And before this story goes any further, if you don't want to miss the next stories like this, please take a moment right now to subscribe to this YouTube channel so you'll always be here when a new chapter is shared. I learned early that being strong meant staying quiet, not complaining, not breaking down in front of anyone. I became good at listening, comforting others, and holding everything together. But inside, there was a part of me that was slowly getting tired. A part that wanted to scream that strength doesn't mean I don't feel pain. I grew up in a family where emotions were treated like weaknesses. My parents didn't mean to hurt me, but they believed that life rewarded the tough ones. When I cried, I was told to stop being dramatic. When I struggled, I was reminded that others had it worse. Over time, I learned to swallow my feelings before anyone else could see them. I became the daughter who never caused trouble, the one who solved problems instead of creating them. That role followed me everywhere, into school, friendships, relationships. People leaned on me because I seemed unshakable, and I let them. I told myself that being needed meant being loved. What I didn't realize was that every time I ignored my own pain, it didn't disappear. It stayed, quietly stacking itself inside my chest, waiting for a moment when I would finally have to face it. By the time I was in my 20s, everyone expected me to have everything figured out. Career, relationships, confidence. I played the part well. I dressed well, spoke carefully, and learned how to laugh at the right moments. On the outside, I looked like someone who had control over her life. On the inside, I felt like I was constantly holding my breath. Relationships were especially difficult. I became the emotional anchor for everyone I loved. Friends came to me with their heartbreaks, their fears, their failures. I listened, I supported, I stayed strong for them. But when it was my turn to need support, I didn't know how to ask for it. I was afraid that if I showed my cracks, people would stop seeing me as reliable. Worse, I feared they would leave. So I kept giving, even when I was exhausted. I confused being strong with being selfless, and I paid the price in silence. I smiled through conversations while my thoughts were screaming for rest. I told myself I could handle it, because that's what strong people do. At work, the pressure was even worse. I was praised for handling stress well, for never panicking, for always delivering results. Compliments became chains. Every time someone said, "You're so strong, I don't know how you do it," I felt more trapped. I couldn't afford to fail. I couldn't afford to slow down. I pushed myself harder than anyone else ever did. I skipped breaks, ignored burnout, and convinced myself that rest was weakness. And when I finally felt overwhelmed, I blamed myself. I thought something was wrong with me for feeling tired. I didn't realize that even the strongest people have limits. The truth is, strength can be lonely. People assume you don't need help, so they don't offer it. They assume you're okay, so they don't ask. And after a while, you start to believe that you don't deserve support because you've trained everyone to see you as invincible. I remember sitting alone in my apartment one night, lights off, phone silent, realizing that I had no idea who I could call. Not because I had no one, but because I had never allowed myself to be the one who needed saving. There were moments when I almost broke, days when getting out of bed felt like lifting a weight I could barely carry, nights when I cried quietly so no one would hear. I became an expert at hiding pain behind productivity. If I stayed busy enough, maybe I wouldn't have to feel. But pain doesn't disappear just because you ignore it. It waits, and when it finally surfaces, it does so with a force you're not prepared for. I learned that lesson the hard way. One day, something small happened, a minor inconvenience, nothing dramatic, and I broke down completely. Not in public, not in front of anyone else, but alone. I sat on the floor and cried until my chest hurt. It wasn't about that moment. It was about years of being strong without permission to be weak. That breakdown scared me, but it also opened my eyes. I realized I couldn't keep living like this. Strength without honesty was slowly destroying me. I started questioning where this version of me came from. When did I decide that my worth was measured by how much I could endure? When did I learn that asking for help meant failing? The answers weren't simple, but they were honest. I had been trying to earn love by being useful, dependable, unbreakable. but love shouldn't require you to disappear inside yourself. Learning to be vulnerable felt unnatural at first. I didn't know how to say, "I'm not okay," without apologizing. I didn't know how to accept comfort without feeling guilty. But slowly, I tried. I spoke up when I felt overwhelmed. I admitted when I was scared. And to my surprise, the world didn't fall apart. Some people stepped closer instead of walking away. Not everyone understood. Some people were uncomfortable seeing me change. They preferred the old version of me, the strong one who never needed anything. Losing those people hurt, but keeping them would have cost me more. I learned that outgrowing certain relationships is sometimes the price of self-respect. I began redefining what strength meant to me. Strength wasn't about endurance anymore. It was about honesty, about setting boundaries, about resting without guilt, about choosing myself even when it disappointed others. That kind of strength felt quieter, but it felt real. There are still days when I fall back into my old patterns without realizing it. Days when someone asks how I'm doing, and I answer I'm fine, before my mind can even catch up with my heart. It's automatic, like muscle memory built from years of pretending. Healing doesn't erase habits overnight. It slowly challenges them, one moment at a time. Sometimes I feel frustrated with myself for not being further along, for still feeling tired, unsure, or overwhelmed. But I'm learning that progress doesn't mean perfection. It means awareness. It means noticing when I'm pushing myself too hard and choosing to stop, even when stopping feels uncomfortable. I remind myself that feeling weak doesn't undo my growth. It's part of it. Strength and vulnerability aren't opposites. They exist together, even on the same day, even in the same moment. If you're listening to this, and people often tell you how strong you are, I want you to pause for a second and really hear this. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to admit that you're tired of holding everything together. Being strong does not mean sacrificing yourself until there's nothing left. It does not mean carrying everyone else's pain while ignoring your own. You don't owe the world your exhaustion just because you've proven you can handle it. You deserve care, softness, and understanding too. And needing those things doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop pretending that you're okay when you're not. For a long time, I believed my story didn't matter because it wasn't dramatic enough. No big scandals, no public breakdowns, no obvious tragedies, just quiet pressure, silent expectations, endless responsibility. But I've learned that invisible struggles are still struggles. Emotional exhaustion doesn't need a spotlight to be real. The weight of always being dependable, always being composed, always being the strong one can slowly drain you without making a sound. Just because others can't see your pain doesn't mean it's insignificant. Your experience matters, even if no one applauds it, even if no one notices it. You don't need to justify your feelings by comparing them to someone else's suffering. Sharing this part of myself is terrifying, because once you tell the truth, you can't hide behind the image people have built of you. You risk being misunderstood. You risk disappointing those who admired your strength from a distance. But staying silent was costing me more than speaking ever could. I was disappearing inside a version of myself that everyone loved except me. Choosing honesty means accepting that not everyone will understand your journey, and that's okay. I'd rather be real than admired for a mask that slowly suffocates me. Vulnerability isn't attention-seeking. Sometimes it's survival. I don't want to be known as the strong one anymore. I want to be known as someone who is honest about her limits, her fears, and her needs. Someone who feels deeply and allows herself to slow down without guilt. I want a life where my value isn't measured by how much I can endure, but by how authentically I live. Strength to me now means choosing peace over performance. It means listening to my body when it asks for rest. It means setting boundaries even when they make others uncomfortable. This version of strength is quieter, less impressive to the world, but far more meaningful to me. If this story feels familiar, I want you to know you're not alone. There are so many people walking around carrying invisible weights, smiling through conversations while silently struggling. You might feel like no one sees how tired you are, how much effort it takes just to keep going, but your feelings are valid, even if they're hidden. You don't have to wait until you completely break to deserve help. You don't have to earn rest by reaching your limit. You are allowed to choose yourself before everything falls apart. Survival shouldn't be the goal. Living should be. I'm still learning how to balance strength and softness, responsibility and rest. Some days I manage it well. Other days I fall back into overthinking and overdoing. But the difference now is that I'm listening. I'm paying attention to what my mind and body are telling me instead of silencing them. I'm learning to forgive myself for being imperfect, for needing time, for not having all the answers. Growth isn't loud. Sometimes it looks like choosing to stop, to breathe, to feel. And that has changed the way I see myself and my life. This is my story, not because I want sympathy, and not because I want to be seen as broken. I share it because truth matters. Everyone thinks I'm strong, and maybe I still am. But now I understand that real strength isn't about never falling apart. It's about letting yourself be human, even when it's messy, uncomfortable, and imperfect. It's about honoring your limits, instead of punishing yourself for having them. And if there's one thing I hope you take from this, it's this. You don't have to be strong all the time to be worthy.